Hey everyone, it's Dave. Welcome into Module 10. This week we're going to have two lectures. The first one is on modern architecture, and this lecture is going to be the basis for our project this week. I'm going to have you fill out a modern architecture worksheet. You're just going to do some research on a building of your choice. And then the second lecture is on post-impressionism, and I'll tell you about that once we go over to the Canvas site. Again, we have an architecture worksheet to complete this week, but you do have some grace as far as turning it in for an extra week, and then journal entry number 9. So let's head over to the Canvas site. I'll walk you through this week's module. All right, here we are on the Canvas site. We're going to take a look at Module 10. Up top, we have our video that you're watching right now, our action plan for the week, and finally my office hours every Monday and Wednesday, 4:30 to 7. Our first lecture is on modern architecture, which parallels modern art, but it's also centered more in the United States rather than in Europe. So it's really a cool lecture, our study guide, and then for the further exploration section, we're going to be taking a look at two major buildings. One is Falling Water, and this is the iconic Falling Water here by Frank Lloyd Wright. We'll talk a lot about that during the lecture. You're not allowed video on the inside of the home, but this is a video on the surrounding landscape. I've got Falling Water's website here. Also, it has a very active Facebook page. And then also the Stall House is a home we're going to spend a lot of time at during the lecture. It is part of the Case Study House project. I believe it's Case Study House number 22 or 23. And then this is a list and map locating all the case study houses here in Southern California. After that, we're going to have a lecture on post-impressionism. And we've got our lecture, our study guide. For the further exploration section here, this is an optional movie. It's a very cool movie though, so it's something to bookmark for maybe over the winter time rather than during the semester. It is a 2-hour film. I always recommend breaking it up into 2 sections because it is pretty dry because it deals a lot with government leaders as well as lawyers. And if you don't like government and if you don't like lawyers, you will dislike them even more after this film. But it's fascinating how this guy dies and his art collection basically gets stolen out from under his will. And it's pretty interesting, but again, it's optional, something I would watch though after this semester is over. After that, I'm going to jump down to the journal. Now the journal is going to be based on Fauvism, which is not something we've covered yet. It's going to be something we cover in the next module. The cool thing about modernism, just like we saw that film with Claude Monet actually painting, is we get to hear from these artists in the first person. And so Notes of a Painter is literally Matisse's thoughts about art during the early 1900s. And it's a really fascinating reading, especially if you are an artist yourself. So I've got the link here, and then this is what Matisse looked like. Jumping back, we have one last thing to do this week, which is a modern architecture worksheet. That is our project. It is due Sunday the 9th. However, it does have a grace period until Sunday the 16th. After you've watched the modern architecture lecture, you are to choose one building in which to do more research on. It cannot be any building showcased in the lecture. However, it is okay to use an architect that was in the lecture. For instance, Frank Lloyd Wright. As long as you don't use Falling Water or Hollyhock House or any of the other buildings I talk about that he designed, you can use any of his other, basically 1,000 other buildings that he designed and created during his lifetime. You're going to need to choose a modern building, which means that it needs to be built within specific years, from the 1850s to the 1950s. It needs to be constructed using the skeleton and skin system. This is something that I talk about during the lecture. Basically, stay away from anything that has a classical motif, which would include columns and arches, things like that. If anything says neoclassical or Gothic revival, That is not the skeleton and skin system. And finally, it also needs to be made with modern materials, primarily glass, concrete, and steel. I would even add cast iron to that list. But that will help define what a modern building is. There are many modern buildings around areas of Southern California. Downtown LA, the city of Orange, Fullerton, Newport Beach all has historic modernist homes. All your major cities in the U.S. It doesn't have to be in the U.S. You can use a modernist home in Scandinavia, in Australia, in Japan. Any place like that is totally okay. I have some examples of past students. And what you're going to do here is you're going to fill out this worksheet. At the very top of the worksheet, you're going to pop in a picture or two of the building. You can even put in a picture of the interior. Question 2 asked you to talk about the name of the building, its location, when was it constructed, and so on. Provide some information about the architect or architects. I would even add architectural firm if that's the case. What were the major building materials? This should be a fairly short paragraph. In fact, probably no more than a sentence or two. What makes the building you chose modern? Again, it's those 3 elements that we learned about, which is the time period, the building technique of skeleton and skin, and also the material that's used. That's what makes it modern. Why did you end up choosing this building? And please list 3 academic level sources. Wikipedia is not an academic level source. So choose 3 that are very good that you're going to get information from, create hyperlinks to that, and that's what I'm looking for. The project is worth 40 points. This is the breakdown. 8 points for just choosing a building that is modern. 5 points for the responses. As far as responses go, I'm looking for 25 to 30 lines of text. Content, spelling, and grammar. 20 points for this. Please note that if you end up using AI on this project, that I will immediately deduct 5 points, if not more, depending on the severity of its usage. Finally, the source material. Did you choose 3 academic level sources? 7 points for that. And that is everything for this week. This is Module 10, only 4 more modules to go after this, the last one being the final exam. So really after this, we've got about 3 more modules to complete. Lots of fun material. We even have a film coming up. And I think that is everything I need to tell you. Have a great time this week with this module, and I will see you shortly to tell you about module number 11.